Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Carpo's channel. Today I'm here to express my cognitive dissonance. This video, I guess, should be entitled cognitive dissonance. It's one of those terms you may or may not have heard. You may know very well what it means. And it's pretty self-explanatory. It's when you hold two opposing viewpoints that contradict one another. And all of the extremes that we go to defend these differences of point. And it's something that we all have. It's something that we all can relate to. I don't think there's a single person on this planet that doesn't have some sort of a cognitive dissonance within their lives. And I wanted to give a couple of examples so you can see where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to get at here. It could be something very simple. Like an example I heard was if a person buys a car that they really wanted, and then later, but they're an environmentally friendly person, right? And they want to reduce emissions and whatnot, so they upgrade, buy a new car, and then they find out later that it has horrible emissions. It's super damaging to the environment, and the person has the choice to either lessen how much the environment means to them by using excuses such as, well, it's just one car, or, well, I just won't drive quite as much. And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong in this case. I'm saying that the person holds two opposing viewpoints. One, that they don't want to drive a car. Two, they have to have a car. And that they need one for work. Now I can give you an example, I guess, I think that a lot of people run into if they're not money-oriented, such as myself. I love helping people out, and I've always been really good at getting along with people, with customers, and dealing with business. But I always want to help everybody out too. In the case that I never end up making much in life, I used to buy like beads and jewelry, and I ended up giving all my necklaces away, or my beads, because I love to share. Which brings me to like a concern, or not a concern, but an issue that's always come up is that I barely have enough to get by. So on one hand, I tell myself, well, damn it, I'm a human. And I work, and I deserve to have a good life. And on another hand, part of me is saying, well, what is a good life? Define what you mean by a good life. And that's really the main course here. The main issue that I wanted to talk about was that very dissonance, which is making money in a world where money's not that important to you. And everyone has a varying degree of what they accept to be a good life. For some people, they're not happy unless they can buy their name brand clothes. I mean, people get seriously upset if they can't afford to buy new clothes. To me, in my life, in my perspective, I do not understand it. It's never been a concern of mine, because I know I can find whatever I need at Goodwill. Whatever suits my style or need, it's always available. And I don't exactly wear stylish things, so it doesn't matter. But I can see that people have different lifestyles and different requirements for that lifestyle. But one thing I've learned is that the more money you make, the more you spend. And times when I've been doing really well in the past, when I worked for myself as a carpenter, there was a year when I was making pretty good money, and I just spent it. I don't have anything to show for it. Perhaps you'd, use your credit card a little more often, or maybe you would buy a couple more things for the house and say, damn it, I deserve it. And along comes that dissonance again. You got, well, I should be saving money because I might be broke down the line. Oh, but I deserve to have fun now. It seems like whenever I'm doing pretty well with something, and I get something going, I've invested a lot of time and energy into it. And then I kind of blow that off and say, oh, well, I'm just going to help people out or hook people up. Which also is something else that comes to mind is I always want to help people, but sometimes somebody like a friend will ask me for something, and I'll feel like, get your own. It's not always a friend. It could even be a family member. It could be something as stupid as wanting to borrow a lighter. And I know that sounds totally petty. For example, somebody who's always taking a lighter who wants to borrow your lighter, or somebody who never has weed that wants to bum a bowl, or somebody that never has this or always has that. And then my instant reaction is to want to help people out, but I have a small voice in me saying, well, you've earned that. That's yours, And it's a small enough voice to where I can override it, because I naturally want to help people. But I think that's one of the things that we can see, that helping others is helping yourself. But helping yourself is helping others, in the sense that if you're not doing well in your own life, then helping others isn't going to do any good. In other words, if you're broke and you're trying to give your last $5 to somebody else who's broke, that's not going to do you any good, because then you're just going to be in the same situation again. So we kind of do look at ourselves to see what level we're on with other people too. But holding opposing viewpoints is something that comes up a lot in modern day, especially with religion and science. I've always found it interesting when I hear that a scientist that's in, like a physics professor or something, is, say, a Christian, because, you would think that science and religion are separate, and in many regards they are, but they're not, of course. We know that all science, they're not opposites in any way. They're not together, but they're not opposites. They're just two different things. But they do have similarities, which is they're both trying to understand the world around us, one through faith and one through reason. And combining those two helps us to really understand the world. It's funny, I think it's important to ask ourselves why we want certain things. Instead of just saying, I want this, we ask ourselves what we're going to do with it, or what good it will be. Will it just be sitting around down the road? And this helps us to not want to spend so much money or need so much money, so we have more flexibility. Ultimately, minimalism is, I think, the key. I've found a balance. There's people who give up everything, and then there's people who have to have everything. And I find that I don't need anything in particular. I just like using all the toys that are around me. I mean, this 3D reality we live in is pretty damn cool. There's a lot of stuff to play with. There are a lot of fun toys, and especially in today's world, the technology, which is another cognitive dissonance. Wanting to live simply, yet wanting to embrace everything around me. That's probably the second most difficult one for me, is because there have been times where I just wanted to give everything up. You know what I mean? Oh, I have to do something really quick here. Just a quick phone call. I guess distancing ourselves from what we can't have is sometimes a coping mechanism. In the sense that if a person sees a person who's very rich, and this is why people dressed so differently, and why the upper class dressed so nicely in, ancient Europe, because the 15 and 1600s, there was a whole thing about how the serfs, the poor people, the workers, they saw that they don't have the same clothes as these people, they don't have the same stuff, and in their minds they would never get there. And this is how the upper class has always wanted it. So the lower class has a cognitive dissonance about wanting to get ahead in today's world. On one hand, we think we can do it, and we know we can do it, and we're told, your mind has the power to do anything you want. But then on the other hand, we're told, you should accept your lot in life, or that you should accept what has been given to you, or you should be happy with what you have. So here we have folks saying, be happy with what you've got, and always be grateful. And then on the other hand, folks are saying, if you want to gain more, you have to ask for it, and want it, and attract it, and work for it. So what does a person do if they don't want income, they don't want money, but they want to have a successful, happy future so they can provide for others? And this is why it's a very difficult thing if you're a family person as opposed to a single person. Single people, and I mean no offense here, just as a disclaimer, we've all been single at one time or another, but I found that the single people who are my age tend to be very opinionated on certain subjects. Of course, all people are opinionated, but on particular subjects that they don't that they may have a different viewpoint on if they were parents. And I'm careful to not step on and sit out and say, oh, well, if you just don't understand, if you haven't had kids. Because there are too many people who do that. Oh, you just haven't been there. You just don't understand. But you really don't if you haven't had kids. So obviously it doesn't matter if your friends have kids. Or a lot of people say, oh, well, I grew up with my nephew, or yeah, I have a little brother. But it's totally different having your own children. Because there's one obligatory issue, which is you are the parent. And your inspiration is what gives them inspiration. And your heartache is what brings them heartache. You can't just walk away from it. You can't walk away from them if you're a good parent. And so you're forced to reckon with that childish, crazy emotion that they come out with. They'll just pop out with some outburst, whether it be positive or negative. You'll have to deal with them crying at 10 in the morning. And then you'll have to deal with them running around and screaming and jumping off the walls at 10 at night. And the parent has to make many decisions. And you do have that dissonance about whether you should let your kids grow up to be what they want, or whether you should try to help nudge them towards being something so they're competitive with the world. And as well, you have that you're supposed to give everything you can to your kids as far as attention and understanding and listening when they need it. But at the same time, a lot of people don't give enough attention to themselves and their own lives and what they want. And that's a huge issue. I've heard a lot of stories about people who, when their kids leave, kind of in a way, they just look at each other and say, who are we and do I know you? The couples change and they no longer maybe love each other, or maybe they didn't love each other. My wife and I love each other very much, and I'm very fortunate to have someone who is on a level with me that understands that we're just people. I don't think I've ever met anybody quite like my wife, and that would go without saying. We've been together for almost 18 years. But, there's something special about a person that you can understand and that understands you. And that's willing to poke and prod when it's needed, but to shut up when it's not. And that's something we've done. But what I've noticed is that a lot of couples they feel obligated to stay together, but their hearts tell them to get away. And then you're fighting with your own, what you want to do with your life, and what is holding you back, such as a family. If people think of it as holding them back, they'll often run away, instead of saying, this is my chance to be a family person, to provide, to not just provide money. And that's what scares a lot of people off. They don't feel like they can provide for their family. So they take off thinking they'll be better off without them. That's a complete cop-out. But giving attention to one another, not just kids, not just family people, but to everybody, and to come together and to realize that we are all one. And that while I may say something that offends someone, or they may say something that offends me, we both understand that we have our viewpoints not to hurt each other. We have our viewpoints to help ourselves. So our viewpoints are our arrogance, but it's also our humility. It's how we share and how we learn. And to not hold a grudge against one another just because we have a different idea of what reality is. I think it's very crucial right now that everybody realizes that each one of us has this condition of cognitive dissonance, and each one of us has sad moments, happy moments. We're elated, we're depressed, we're angry, we're laughing. And to cherish that emotion for what it is. There's nothing that I can imagine more devastating that could happen to the human race than losing our emotion. Because at that point we lose everything. Take care now, and I'll talk to you all later.